And here we are, we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Coaching Conversation. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Izzy Rodriguez. Izzy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, first of all, hello, Todd. Thank you for having
Hi.
me once again. It's good to be here with you. Hello, everyone. I'm Izzy Rodriguez. I am speaking to you from Toronto, Ontario. And I'm a certified coach who works with mid-level managers in various different industries. And I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. I'm happy you're here too. I love it when we get to have these conversations.
Me too.
And the topic that we're talking about today, Izzy, is self-reflection, specifically self-reflection as something that we do as coaches. And we talked a little bit beforehand about this, but I think why don't we just start off with what do we mean by self-reflection? Like what even is that? Because it's one of those, I think it's one of those buzzwords that people hear, and it could mean different things to different people. So let's settle in on what we mean by it.
Well, I love that grounding question, right? So as coaches, we're trained to sort of like, what do we really mean? What do we really mean when we're saying, right? Because we want clarity. We want to make sure that we're aligned and what it is we're talking about, and also to create space. And so what do I mean when I say self-reflection? I mean some sort of practice that I engage in where I look internally. I mean, essentially just a method or a practice by which I can take a deeper look internally and tap into my inner sense of self-knowing.
Inner sense of self-knowing. So I like that. It's, what's coming up is the last time we were in this space and having a conversation, we talked about mindfulness and folks who come to our practice who are sometimes skeptical about mindfulness practices, and in fact how you and I were both mindfulness skeptics at certain points in our careers, and this sounds like the exact opposite of that, doesn't it?
Well, it sounds like a bit of growth has happened between then and now, that our perspective has somehow shifted and we're now beginning to live the value of mindfulness practice.
Yeah, I think yes, I like that. I mean, for me, I echo everything you say. I think I love it. It makes a lot of sense. And for me, it's about curiosity. So many things are, and some folks have heard me say this before, but I think that when we can apply curiosity to a situation, regardless of what that situation, whether it's internal or external, then it's very difficult to be in a space of fear or anxiety around that topic, whatever it happens to be, right? Because curiosity requires a certain calm, deliberate inspection. And I think that calm, deliberate inspection in us, like when directed at self, can be really, really powerful and scary too. So you kind of have to be okay with being with that scary part.
Yeah, the challenge that I feel with the word curiosity, and I agree, Todd, with everything you said. Curiosity is so important, and it doesn't seem as though in our culture, North American culture, that we're rewarded for creating spaces for curiosity. So much of what our value is attached to is the work product that we're able to deliver, the metric that needs to be reached, or the expertise that needs to be conveyed. And so because our reward structure is really based on product, like output, it doesn't necessarily, in my experience at least, doesn't reward the process of being curious. So, and I'm sure we in different, iterations, we've been in that situation. Like, just because we can do a thing doesn't mean does it mean that we should do that thing? That's the curiosity question. that
Mm-hmm.
often doesn't happen. I think as coaches, we spend our time in spaces of development that require from us as coaches to be curious about how we show up as coaches, who we are as a coach, what do I want to manifest as a coach, and how does that work with different clients who have different needs, and who have come to us with lived experience that is varied and unique to them.
Mm-hmm. I think you're getting to the point that I have this urge, and what I want to do is I want to sort of apply this, because so clients come to us with any number of different topics, right? Things that they want to talk about, and it's often it's career related because of the kind of work that you and I do, but often what we know is that people with careers are human beings who have lives, who so the career topic is sometimes something else. It's all mixed together in a delightful bundle or a Gordian knot, depending on how you perceive it, right? And I think when I think of clients who show up, who often are I'm dissatisfied with how my career is going, I'm dissatisfied with how my relationship is going, I'm dissatisfied with fill in the blank. What I'm interested in, and what I'd really love to know your answer to is, well, like, how does self-reflection serve your client? And that's, how does your self-reflection serve your client in those moments?
So as a coach, for my clients, I invite them to be more self-reflective. Some people have more access to that than others. And it's something that most certainly can be, cultivated over time with time, energy, and effort. But what I hear you saying, Todd, is how, as a coach, do I get curious? Do I infuse, thread, incorporate self-reflection into my practice? Have I heard that correctly?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you and I have talked a little bit, beforehand and now, on camera, about how, like, what self-reflection is, and how we apply it and what's important. And I guess, where I'm going with this is, like, it's great that we're self-reflective, and it's great that we are self-reflective coaches. And I believe that this is one of the things that separates a really excellent coach from just an average coach, or even a poor one, is the ability to be in that space of self-reflection and understand. But why? Like, what is it about me being self-reflective, or you being self-reflective, that creates an enhanced or a better experience for those clients who show up with career, relationship, whatever, that they want help with? Because that's ultimately what it is.
Yeah, I mean, structurally, I think that the client and the coach each play a role in the process of coaching, right? So the client in the big A agenda is in charge of the topic. She gets to decide where we go in coaching. And usually that's attuned to really what's most alive for her. And she should be. And the coach's responsibility is to manage the small A agenda. So the way in which communications are structured, the way in which meetings are held and structured in a particular way, so that, the client can really tap into what's top of mind for her, and come to some sort of understanding that she didn't have before, before the session.
Yeah.
The coach's journey in that sort of small A agenda is parallel, I think, to what that is. So as a coach, I'm in the room with you, my client, and there's a rhythm to it. There's a cadence. There's a level of authenticity and active listening that's really going into it, and really kind of paying attention and sharing the gift of presence with her. But there's also, like, well, I want to be able to do those things that will make me a better coach for that client and across clients. So one of the things that I encourage my clients to do is have, like, post-coaching session reflections. So it's a regular part of what we do. It's part of the offering, and clients get the opportunity post-coaching session to capture their insights, their ahas, their observations, right? And that's a way to really kind of delve deep per session what really landed or resonated or didn't for the client. When I say the coach-client trajectory is parallel, is I've learned that because I found it such a value, and because clients have told me that that's been a value for them, to call deep on my curiosity to try that post-coaching session reflection piece for myself. And so that includes questions like, what do I think went well? What could I have done differently? Or some sort of like brainstorm that hadn't occurred to me before this thoughtful conversation happened that I want to capture to make a part of a future coaching engagement. Or to course correct within a coaching engagement if there's something amiss, if there's something that if we've gone off track or we're focusing on the thing that's not most alive. A reflective practice for a coach, parallel to the reflective practice that a client does for herself, for her own benefit, can help strengthen the coaching relationship, strengthen the engagement, but also as an offshoot, make me more attuned to what my clients are.
I love that. And I wasn't expecting a practical application. And what I love about this practical application is that it's reminding me of something that when I was in software development and in agile spaces, we used to do all the time, called a retrospective. And so the team would go through their sprint, and the sprint would often be a week long or whatever. And at the end of the sprint, it would end with a retrospective where the team gets together and essentially says what went well, what didn't go well, what we want more of, what we want less of. And the questions can change from time to time, but what you end up with is an aggregate of data. And what I love about what you're describing is it's taking that thing that can be very, very emotionally charged and turning it into something which is data, something which is actionable. Like, because of these reflections, I can make this change or that change or this adjustment, or not, if that's where the data sends me. And I think that that's really cool, because I hadn't considered the possibility that an individual self-reflective exercise, which I know that you and I both do, sort of has the same flavor to it.
Yeah, it does.
I've never used that language, but but it's
again,
what's popping up right now.
Both of us have revealed themselves, right? So picture, imagine, if you will, a 6-month coaching engagement. The way in which to be able to attune to the arc of growth and development over session 2, session 4, session 6, session 8, and as you're working towards session 12, talking, reflecting on what you're saying about data, that has a way for capturing our reflections, the client for herself and her growth and development and what has resonated for her, and in a parallel track for me, as a reflective, thoughtful, human being who just happens to be a coach. How do I also engage in the reflective practice of growth so that I can really become even more attuned to the client than I think I already am? We think we are, but the data reveals in some ways, and it has for me, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, that there were times when I was off base. There were times when I, thought it was X, but it was Y. It gives me a way to then circle back to the client and say, I think I heard this piece. Is that on the right track? Or tell me if there's something amiss, or is it somehow incomplete or inconclusive? So it gives me a way to attune and uphold the values of feedback-informed coaching, except the feedback is self-reflective feedback that we
Yes.
then impart for the benefit of our mutual growth. So it's much more of a symbiotic relationship than otherwise one would think looking from the outside. And that's sort of the behind the scenes element of what, Todd, what you're saying about what separates good coaches or thoughtful coaches or more reflective coaches, curious coaches, than those who
Mm-hmm.
don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yes. And I think there's a couple things that are popping up for me as you're describing this. And one of them is like, I love the idea of something being data driven while still being very human centric. Because I think that's one of those paradoxes that exists in our space, which is really, really interesting. Because I'll be honest, when we started this conversation, I was kind of expecting that we would be going down the mindfulness path again, and we'd be talking about, like the art of presence and different types of meditative practices, perhaps, or whatever, right? And certainly those can all be part of it. And even that can still drive data-driven decisions, and drive data-driven decisions.
I don't
Good thing
disagree
this is live, because I would edit that out if I could.
I don't disagree with one of the tangible values is data. But if you think about it, people have been practicing yoga for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Part of what makes that a meditative practice is the ability to do it consistently over time.
Yes.
What I'm suggesting is the same for coaches who are interested in self-reflective work. So in that way, it is a meditative practice, because it's tempting to really sort of like move on to the next thing. Got to take that phone call. Got to send that email. But you don't have to be a coach to do that. If you're someone who is in any sort of way connected to new business development, whether you're prospecting clients in financial services or legal services, or if you're trying to execute on a project that is in your portfolio to execute, the temptation is to move to the next thing. It's much harder to stop, pause, take a minute to reflect. What do I think I did well? What could I have done differently? And I make space for inspiration, because I think creativity and inspiration really drive this kind of thoughtful, integrated, personable, human kind of experience that I think we both really enjoy and appreciate. It's the thing that separates, I think, good coaches from great coaches. And it invites, again, curiosity. It invites a degree of humility, because it takes a lot of courage to say, I could have done this thing differently. I'm noticing your reaction, Todd. What's coming up from you?
Well, so that I have a long history in project management. That, like, most of my career has been spent in the project management space, or project management leadership of some sort, PMO, all that good stuff. And our friends at the Project Management Institute, who create the PMP courses and PMBOK, there's the very last phrase, or the very last phase of any project, is called lessons learned. And it's in over 2 decades of project management, I've seldom worked at a place where that's done. It's like, oh, we're not going to do that. We don't have time for it.
Right.
And often, and certainly as a project manager, I was more than happy to do that, because that's the space where the problems and where the challenges and where the things that didn't go right are exposed. And what's really interesting to me about what you're saying is, in order to sort of enter that space with genuine curiosity and safety, it almost needs to be created in such a way that there's not success and failure, there's success and learning. And like something needs to exist, like the punitive nature of getting something wrong, quote unquote, whatever that means, right, is once that can be separated and extracted, then all of that becomes much more possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think so it sort of circles back to what we were talking before about how in the corporate setting or in the workplace, what's rewarded are the deliverables that we've mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm hearing is you're talking about a paradigm shift that incorporates space for reflection,
Mm-hmm.
so that it invites curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And so those can happen in meaningful and small ways that are manageable in this modern world that we live in. For example, my coaching sessions are an hour, but the calendar invites I send to clients are an hour and 15 minutes. The idea is to preserve that 15 minutes, which is not coaching time, but it's dedicated time that the hope is that the client will take that opportunity, because it's already on her calendar, to be able to reflect. Now, those things just don't happen because I'm the coach and I know better.
Right.
We have a substantive conversation about the value of it. What I don't say is that I'm doing that also on the back end. So that 15 minutes, in addition, that's tacked onto the hour that presumably she's using to capture her session, her ahas and her observations, I'm doing exactly the same thing. So whether it's my desire to grow as a coach, I'm making it a value proposition to add that to my schedule. As much as I make other decisions in a particular way that allows for other ways in which I can be attuned. So I'm not the person who schedules back-to-back coaching sessions. It is tough because you never know what's going to happen in a coaching session. It is fool's errand, in my opinion, to be able to go into a coaching session, end on a dime, and then start one up 10 minutes.
And pivot. Yeah, it's
like
tough.
That just, if you think about the mental space and energy that you need to command, and quite frankly, the presence that your client deserves.
Of course.
Like, you're not doing what you committed to do as a coach if you're not able to give and be in presence with your client. And it doesn't matter if you're a coach. You could be a teacher. You could be an attorney. You could be in any profession where attunement is so critically important, despite it's not being rewarded in particular ways.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that's really interesting here, because it's an intangible, but it's essential.
Yeah. And you could sit here and say, well, you can, create some structured reflection practices. And most of us would bristle at that. Like, I want freedom and flexibility and creativity, and that, those don't flow from structure. But I'm going to argue that there's a middle way forward. The middle way forward is to be able to give yourself enough structure so that you're reminding yourself in the moment that it's happening that it's an important thing to do. So the 15 minutes says to me that this is a value that I have and it's important. If it's not on the calendar, then if I'm already distracted by the 101 things I need to do that day, I don't have that visual reminder to remind me that this is an important thing to do and that it is fundamentally aligned with my values.
Fundamentally aligned with your values, I think, is like that. That's the mic drop, isn't it?
Well, that's a mic drop.
But at the same time, because if it's not, if it wasn't fundamentally aligned to your values, then it would be performative. It would be right. It would be difficult to do.
Well, it'd be difficult to do. It would be performative. And listen, many people do that. And sometimes there were moments in my life that was the driving force. We had to meet this metric or that deliverable. if you've been in any kind of professional school, at least in law school, it was very much driven by deliverables, making the cogent argument before the court at the right time, and also while understanding nuance.
Exactly.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
No. And no, you're right. It doesn't have to be that way, even though lots and lots of our clients are in situations and in environments that are driven by performative deliverables, like not performative deliverables, like by delivering stuff, right? Like my value is about delivering X, Y, or Z, not about, my ability to be self-reflective, my ability to be curious. And I guess what I'm hearing and what I think is really interesting is that one impacts the other. Like there actually is an ROI on this self-reflective practice, which allows the other stuff to flow more easily.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because so I didn't start this practice when I first began coaching. I was so hyper-focused on sort of like asking the perfect question at the right time. Like there's talk about data and structure, right? But I've learned over time that becoming more self-reflective increase the ROI of the engagements that I offer. And essentially, it comes down to this: how do I want to show up in this space? As a coach, as a friend, as a partner, as a human, as we often talk about, Todd, you and I. And so just, wanted to make sure that like, I'm not some Superman who has a cape that just, where the wisdom.
Well, you are a little bit.
They're talking, calling deep on one's courage to answer those difficult questions. What could I have done differently? Invites some self-reflection. So, and if you're calling deep on your courage to be able to act on that self-reflection, that's the thing over time that makes you a better coach, a better employee, a better parent, whatever sort of like the title could be. And the good news is that we all have the ability to do it. And it just takes some soul searching and some practice and a willingness to fail, because I described a coaching practice that I used, but it didn't happen overnight. And there were many instances where I fell flat on my face and things didn't work. So my ability to play, to experiment, led me to this place that I am right now. And what it will look like today, what it looks like today will be different than what it looks like 2 years from now, or 10 years from now.
Okay. So I got it, because we're almost out of time, Izzy. But I want to ask one last question. So someone's listening to this and is going, okay, cool, I'm in. I want to start a self-reflective practice. What's one piece of advice that you'd offer?
The good news is you probably already do a self-reflective practice and you don't know it. So if I were thinking about it sort of like structurally, I would say, what do you currently do that feels like a meditative practice, right? Some people practice yoga. Some people go to the gym. Some people go for regular walks or garden. So what do you already do? And then the next logical question for me what is it that you need? So like, what do you already do? What do you need? And then what's the thing that can help move you forward? So like those three questions then give you a bit of a roadmap, and it doesn't have to be big and splashy or sexy just to be valuable. It can be small. But what it will be is attuned to who you are and what works best for you.
Yeah, it's and with consistent application.
And consistency.
That's
just the thing. And so if you notice that you're not being consistent, getting curious about what's getting in the way of that regular engagement.
Exactly. I love it. I think that's really cool. Izzy, thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for today.
These
I
conversations
really,
with you.
yeah, I love talking to you. I know that we're going to do it again next month, and that's going to be fantastic. But listen, until then, because we do have to sign off,
Yep.
folks listening, if they want to get a hold of Izzy, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn is the best place. Izzy Israel Rodriguez. You can find me here. Please drop me a message. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments. And
Yeah.
as I said, I'm in a space of continuous learning. Tell me what I could have done differently.
That's wonderful. I love that. I love that invitation, and I'll accept that too. So thank you for that. And everyone, I'm Todd Kargas. You can reach me at toddkargas.com or here on LinkedIn. And that's a wrap for today. Thank you very much. And yeah, and I guess we'll see you all next time. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.